Today I have Coach Shakir, who is assistant director at the University of Florida. Coach Shakir started his career as a high school head coach and then made the transition recently to the college game. So we're going to talk a little bit about high school athletes, recruiting, and making the transition from high school to college. So Coach, can you start things off by telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I high school coach for 20 years. I was defensive coordinator at Tallahassee Lincoln from 2001 to 2006. Then after that, I was head coach at Gibbs at St. Pete High School, Gibbs in St. Pete, Florida. And then after that, I was head coach back at Tallahassee Lincoln for 8 years. Then after that, I was head coach at Bradenton Manatee for 4 years. Then in between the time, I actually went back to school and got my master's in sports management at Florida A&M, and I was the assistant to the dean of education. I assisted her in her daily activities, everything, and also I was the grad assistant in her office while I was getting my master's. So I was helping her with her sports management program and developing that and installing and continually building that program out.
Okay, I didn't even know that. So you're coming at it from a lot of angles.
Yes.
Cool. So as now in the college game, what do you think a high school freshman or a sophomore should be doing to better prepare themselves to get started in recruiting and ultimately get to the next level? And also, just for context too, for the audience, Coach Shakir, he's helped over 100 high school athletes get to the next game when he was a high school coach. So he's a total expert in this. So excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think first and foremost, if a kid is very serious about going to college and playing at the next level, then they have to be serious about academics. I always felt that the kids who took academics serious were always the ones who ended up qualifying and being prepared and being ready. And I know everyone is not a 4.0 student, but it's the effort at trying your best and doing your best. Because as we're in high school, you deal with everyone that come through the door, no matter what their background is, economically or educationally. And a lot of times some kids struggle academically, but it's just all about the effort that they put in. And I think the kids who have a vision about where they want to be and where they want to go, and then also the kids who may not, just being in a good program, especially having a good high school coach who really cares for them as people and where they want to be as a person. Because I'm a firm believer that the football field is really a byproduct of what you do the other parts of your day. How much do you care about your academics? How much do you care about being a good person? Because when you come on the field, you're only there, let's say at practice, you're only there 2 or 3 hours a day. And a game is only about 2.5 hours. So, but you are what your habits are. And whenever things get tough or a pressure situation hits, you revert back to who you truly are as a person. Mm-hmm. And in those situations and tough situations on the field, you just revert back to your character of who you truly are in a situation. And so that's why I say that the kids who care the most about wanting to move on and wanting to have something greater for themselves after high school are the kids that usually perform and do very well. So I think that's the first. You have to have a passion and a desire to do good in school academically, especially now in this day and age with the transfer portal. And people, even if a school is taking 5 less kids than what they used to before, that's 5 less high school kids because they're going to take 5 transfer portal players as compared to signing 25 high school kids. So what that does is that the sample size has now become smaller. So you have to become greater in everything that you're doing. So you really have to separate yourself academically. You can't even be on a borderline because of the fact that they won't even look at you without those academics. Because why would a college coach go after a kid that's struggling academically while they can get a kid that's out of the transfer portal that's already qualified for college, that's been in college, that knows what college level work is like, and they don't have to go through that process of that maturation process of that kid knowing and understanding that. Sure. So when you have a kid coming out of high school that has good academics, they already a step ahead. And I think also when you look at that, let's say, but the transfer portal has changed everything now.
Oh, yeah.
High school recruiting. So I think the kids have to understand that physically they have to take the weight room very serious because of the fact that you have to be almost college made or close to it as possible. So because the coach can see those dimensions that can transfer to the elite college level on any form, on Division II, 1AA, Group of Five, no matter what level you're trying to get to in a college, you have to physically look like you can perform at that level. So I think those two things, academics and a kid being serious in the weight room and in track, because bigger, faster, stronger players make good football players. So the better and faster you can get that developed as a younger kid. And I think kids who play multiple sports are very prime commodity because of the fact that when you look at it, you're looking at a kid that has a skill set that can be added upon and that's worked on in multiple type of ways. And more importantly than anything else, the kid knows what year-round competition is because of the fact that when they get to college, when the season over, you're going right into off-season training, and your off-season training is intense because you're battling for a position and where you want to be, and then you come in right in the spring ball, so you have a year-round program. So kids who understand that either they come from programs that have year-round programs already in high school, and they are multiple sport athletes, so they're always in a competitive situation. So then that fosters, when they go to the next level, it's natural to them. It's not an adjustment period about how they have to compete in the level, high level they have to compete at.
Sure.
So I think those three things are really the things that kids really have to do from when they're going into ninth grade now. They have to understand academically, athletically, and competitively, the levels that they need to perform at.
100%. And for a student athlete who might not be afforded the same opportunities as somebody else, how do you think a student athlete should present themselves or communicate with a coach in that recruiting process to optimize their opportunity to essentially get recruited?
I think right now with social media, especially Twitter and Huddle, I think those two are avenues that kids that may not have those avenues open to them, or they may not be afforded maybe that exposure at a school. I think technology kind of alleviates that and takes that away from them being able to get exposed and have exposure with that, because of the fact that with the internet, you can send your stuff to anyone, and if it's good, it's gonna get them likes and it's gonna get them retweets and it's gonna go viral.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's very hard now for kids to go unnoticed if they take advantage of the technology that's afforded to them.
Definitely. And what some of my high school coaches would always tell me was, if you're good enough, they're going to find you, especially in this digital age. So couldn't agree more with that. So, all right, coach, anything else you think in addition to what we just talked about would be helpful for a young high school student athlete to know, to be doing, or anything else?
I think if they can't afford it financially, to go to college camps, to get out there and to see what it's like, to understand that the world is bigger than where you are. No matter, even if you're in a large city, you really have to put yourself in a situation. I think number one, to see what a college is like, what it looks like, what a college camp is like, what do college coaches expect. And I think when you have that experience, then you have that opportunity to really visualize yourself being at that place and even going to other places, other schools that may be like that school. I think that that's a great opportunity for kids to really get a good understanding. And if they can afford it, they can, asking, their high school coach, will they be willing to take them and to show them different places. That's the thing we used to do when I was a head coach in June, every weekend we would go to a different college campus. I would, wherever I was locally, we would go to that college first and support them. Then we would travel to different college campuses. So our kids, I want to, first and foremost, I want them, the kids, to understand that they can be in college. Number one.
Yeah.
I think that's the first step. And then once they got there, then they could see and understand what was expected of them, how did the players look, what was the coaches' expectation of them. It became reality to them. And so I think all programs that can help kids get in that, then also see that setting of seeing if they, especially if they're ever able to watch a college team work out or practice, I think they can understand the intensity of the level of speed that they have to practice at in a high school level, because a lot of times you have elite level players in high school. They've been usually good their whole life or have high level athletic ability their whole life.
Right.
And so unless they come from a loaded football team, and I was always fortunate to have a lot of players, so we didn't really have that issue of competitiveness. But a lot of times, but sometimes you only have a kid that's just so elite that nothing is really challenging to him. But at that next level, it's definitely going to be very challenging.
Different story.
Yeah. So I always used to like to take kids to college practices so they can see it and they can see the guys and the speed of the guys, especially. And I always like for them to see the size of the linemen, offensively, defensively, and how fast and athletic they are. And they be like, "Whoa, coach,
that's a different game."
Yeah, it totally is.
Oh yeah.
And then I always show them a lot of NFL practice film too. Fortunately, I had a lot of friends that worked in the NFL, and I always like to show the kids the practice, because I think so many times they get caught up in the game and the Saturday and the Sundays or the Friday nights, and not understanding what actually goes into the process of getting to that. Right. And then once they saw how hard college players practice and how hard NFL players practice as far as competitiveness and speed and the tempo of things, then they got a better understanding of how they needed to practice, how they need to take their attitude and the level of intensity to the day-to-day function of how they do and how they operate, because that's what you do your habits are really going to pull you through day after day after day to help you be highly successful.
Definitely. And I think going back to what we talked about in that first section, like it all starts with your mindset and your culture and what you deem to be acceptable for yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's all about habits and not accepting anything but the best. And I think people who do that are the ones that ultimately get to the next level and even get to the pros, which is.
That's very true. I used to have a statement I used to ask our kids every day. I like, well, is that enough effort for us to win a state title?
Oh yeah.
And if they'd be like, well, coach, I may have to do that. I like, so if we were playing the state championship today, would you do it? And they're just like, but then it got them in the mind frame of understanding you have to prepare for your best day possible today.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. One of my old coaches, one of his big phrases was that you just have to prepare hard. And it's something that every coach preaches, but it just stuck with me personally. Like you just have to prepare harder than the actual competition is going to be, because if you're in those situations day in and day out that are even tougher than what you're going to see in the game, you're just going to be that much more prepared than the next person or the guy you're going against. So
exactly. I think the Navy SEALs have a phrase they talk about: you never rise to the occasion, you sink to your training. So you revert back to what you actually do on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. Thank you again, everybody. Again, this was Coach Shakir from University of Florida. Coach Shakir, we really appreciate your time and looking forward to witnessing your success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right.